This is Time to Grow. And here's your host, Kyle Marsham.
We're here live at CHFA Now, the largest natural food show in Canada. We're here with Corwin and Ric, the CEO and the Vice President of Ethical Food Group. Welcome to the show, guys. Welcome to the podcast. What's going on?
It's all happening, man. It's kind of, those trade shows where it's just sensory overload.
And stomach overload.
Yeah, true. Yeah, snacks for breakfast.
And I'm actually hungry right now. So.
Oh, no. Well, you need to get out there, man. It's nuts. So how's it for you?
Good. It's non-stop from the time you kind of wake up, right? We had a few hiccups this morning, so we're already running full tilt from the time I open my eyes. I have my daughter here, too. She's a year old tomorrow.
Oh, congrats, man.
Wow, congratulations.
She got her CHFA intro a little while ago, so that was cool. But tell me a little bit more about Ethical Food Group and what you guys do.
Sure. So Ethical Food Group kind of was born out of a combination of a couple of agencies in Western Canada, marketing agencies. We saw an opportunity to help young food brands who want to leave the planet in a better place to not only be advertised, but also to go to market with strategy and help in connecting to people like yourselves around distribution and getting to market in better ways. And so we really focus in that early stage sort of area where the brands really need some help, and really focusing in on values-based. So people who want to leave the planet in a better place than what they found it. And then for our sins, we also work with larger brands who really want to go after that ethical consumer and who are looking to expand their base or understand that consumer better. So we really believe that we know that area of the market pretty well from a consumer-based perspective. And then also as part of it, we've got what's called the Ethical Foods Fund. And it's a small LPGP setup where we've raised some money and invested in 4 brands so far. So.
Exciting. And then what's your role with Ethical as VP of Strategy?
Yeah, strategic partnerships, just focusing on the agency side. In order to do good things for the planet and good things for people, it's a team effort. So, my job is to make sure that we're partnering with the right agent, with the right clients, the right food founders, and making sure that even from the industry that we're partnering with the right kind of services that can really help grow and scale sustainable food brands, especially outside of the organic aisle, and trying to get some traction into consumers that already shop the category, love the category, and don't realize yet that they could be buying stuff that's a lot healthier and a lot better for the world around them. So my job is really focused on making sure that people know what we do as an agency, the services we provide, and sort of that focus that we have in the sustainable food space.
That's incredible. So what really birthed the idea of Ethical Food Group? What were you doing prior to that, and what really drove you to want to support these brands that are making a difference?
Yeah, it's a great question. My background, many moons ago, I worked for Yoplait internationally.
Yoplait.
Yeah. So.
I very vividly remember those commercials as a young kid.
Yeah, so there you go. So, both on manufacturing side as well as sales and marketing internationally, both in Australia and then in the UK. And what we, as a grocery industry, we're awesome at delivering product all over the world. Like, you think about something that's manufactured in Mississauga in Ontario and it's in Vancouver the next day. But I think along the way we've kind of forgotten about the planet and what those impacts are, and trucks going everywhere and plastics and everything else. So where I came from personally was standing around a table and thinking about what's the impact for my kids and their kids and the landfill and everything else. And so raising that up as far as a value is concerned and saying, okay, well, how can we actually help these companies to do better? With all of the benefits of learning how those massive machines work. And so how can we help these brands to actually get a sustainable footprint through grocery? Because grocery is great. I mean, it's the best. One of the best. North American system is the most incredible system in the world. But how do we help these brands to actually make it a better place at the end of the day?
What are some of the sustainability challenges you see brands facing right now?
Packaging's just such a big problem, like landfill and plastics, and the government's gone a certain way and say, okay, no more single-use plastics, but what do you do? So I think, from an investment perspective, we're trying to look at beyond just the brand, but also the value chain challenges there. I think manufacturing footprint, depending on where that manufacturing base is, when we're looking at investments or even brands that we're going to support, it depends on where they are. If water is a problem where you are based and where you're delivering product, then water should be something that you focus on from a brand point of view. But if you're sitting next to major waterfall, that shouldn't be a problem. It should be the effluent that you're then pumping back into that river. So it depends. The lawyer's answer, but there's I think packaging is our issue as a society. I think we're living in Europe where manufacturers were forced to take back cardboard. Is a really interesting first step because it puts the onus on the manufacturer as to where that packaging's going. And so reuse and recycle and all of those things is front of mind for a manufacturer, and it's coming here. So we've got to look at that and help these brands to be able to do it better.
What does it look like from a strategic partnerships perspective if you have a brand that wants to be more sustainable or whatever? You got to kind of source some of those partnerships, look at who's the best distributor, maybe a broker that has good sustainability practices, maybe that marketing agency. Will you really look at it from that holistic approach?
Yeah, and right down to the supply chain of ingredients and transportation and all those pieces. So sometimes brands sort of have those pieces in place, they just don't know how to tell that story, or they don't know how to connect it to the brand or help that differentiation happen for the consumer. But in other cases, especially when they're sort of founder-led businesses they've got so many moving pieces. I mean, they're swimming in their own blood, sweat, and tears. So being able to reach out to advisors and people that can help navigate some of these partnerships that they need and kind of source some of these opportunities to make these changes, they need help. And they really appreciate being able to tap on some shoulders to get some feedback and build new relationships for sure.
And I think out of the panel yesterday, actually at the over the road, they were talking about, and Corwin's done a great job. He's pulled together a form where you can come in as a brand and kind of self-assess where you are on the ethical train. And it's not about being there. It's not about being B Corp at all. It's about knowing where you sit today and then having a view and a vision to go forward and become more ethical or more sustainable. And I think that was really interesting, a point that was made on the panel yesterday, that you really need to be honest with the consumer and honest with the value chain to say, okay, hey, we are where we are today. I'm not going to walk away from you, but a true partnership is about working together to get to a new destination. So helping those brands to be able to have those conversations is also what it's about for us.
Every brand manufacturer person in this industry wants to lead a more ethical business, more sustainable business, right? And I don't think they know where to start, right? So it's nice if there was not a scorecard, but a guide that a lot of these brands could plug into, right? Be like, okay, I'm doing X, Y, and Z, I'm a 5, how do I get to a 10 or a 12 or whatever, right?
And for a lot of brands, that's actually a very overwhelming process because they think they have to tackle every piece of the puzzle all at once. And the reality is they don't have the funds to do that, nor do they have the bandwidth. So I think it's really important that a good strategy with good support, kind of go at it, carefully, but make progress, and just do it in a way that that you can keep your product going, keep your consumers happy, keep the retailers doing their job, but just grow. Always be changing and improving the pieces of the puzzle that you can tackle. It's important to not kind of overcook it. One of the challenges in sustainability is that everyone's trying to do everything all at the same time, and it's just too hard.
Yeah.
How do you balance wanting to be more sustainable, ethical with profitability? Because that's dollar signs.
Scale helps,
right?
Yeah, it's tough, and particularly when retailers. We're hearing all sorts of stories where retailers are putting prices up without even communicating to the brands, and so the brand who's maybe at a negative EBIT position or not profitable because they're trying to get to that scale position aren't benefiting from the additional pricing at retail, and then that becomes a tough conversation if you don't have representation like you guys at that level, right? Where you can be represented by someone who understands that and can have that conversation around margin. And so, pricing, particularly, when the federal government brings in the top 5 supermarkets around Canada and says, what are you doing about profitability? You're killing it. You're killing consumers and brands who are trying to be more sustainable are paying more for the value chain. It's pretty difficult. So I think it's all about transparency. We are where we are as far as sustainability, and to your point, we're a 5 here, but we want to be a 10 in the future. And the truth about getting to a 10 is that it's going to cost us too much, and we'd need to pass that on to the consumer from a pricing point of view. Is the consumer ready to jump? And it was interesting, once again yesterday, where McKinsey's come out with some data that says that consumers are starting to turn the corner. Where it used to be, there was a stat that it was like 74% of consumers would pay more, say that they would pay more for sustainable products, but only 24% do, right? And so there's this gap of saying I will versus what I do. And with prices going up, it makes it harder, but we're starting to see that turn now. So I think climate change, in addition to all of those things, it's putting pressure on wallets everywhere, and then the supermarkets have got a responsibility to carry it through. So grocery is such an interesting puzzle, and I think that's why we love it, because there's just so many things that you can do, right?
Yeah, no, it really is. That's a good point too. Like, people say they want to shop more sustainably, but do they actually care? And where do they care, right? Is it 1, is it 2, is it 5, right? Are they going to spend more on something that has best practices in place, or is it strictly
their values
price?
change based on the category? They're like, oh, well, I only buy upcycled corn chips, but then they'll go buy something in another category that, is
long term. I think more and more consumers, as there's more environmental pressures, where are we leaving the planet for our children and that type of thing, it's more, not that it's not relevant now, it is very relevant, but yeah, the consumer, it's in the consumer's hand. They need to support those brands that are supporting those initiatives to a certain degree, right?
Oh, for sure. And I think this is a purely Ric observation. I think if you look at the natural foods aisle and where that started with 1 or 2 products, and now it's expanded to a whole aisle in superstore, and then the products within that aisle who are becoming more and more sustainable, it's kind of they're leading the way. So as it becomes broader within the supermarket, the consumer gets used to it, they come looking for it, they get exposed to it. They may not necessarily walk into the grocery store with, I need sustainable chips today, but as they get exposed to more and more brands, like a Humble, who's world's first compostable potato chip bag, and they're sitting on the aisle next to Doritos versus in the natural foods aisle, you're starting to get exposed to those brands who want to do better, and so it becomes, and then they get more volume, and then it becomes a better value chain. So yeah.
Humble's one of your portfolio brands.
Yeah.
What has that growth been like? And you just mentioned that they're side by side with Doritos. Were they dual placed? Because I know I saw them in Natural Value, I believe, in Loblaws. And then are you testing both areas and seeing how consumers react?
Yeah, we haven't, us personally have had, we've given them strategy around packaging, look and feel. They've utilised other players to do their work, but they've just cracked the States. And so they're in Whole Foods in the States, so they're not going to sit next to a Doritos in Whole Foods. But in Canada, they've seen some uplift by doing the traditional sampling and getting out there with the messaging in and around their bag. I think where they have seen success in the Loblaws is still in that natural foods aisle, because that consumer's going there looking for it. Where they used to struggle with their old packaging, I believe, is that going up against the Doritos, the consumer they're not looking for them. And so we'll see with the relaunch and where they're at over the next couple of months. Big turns right now. It's doing really, really well. So, congratulations to Alicia and Jeff on what they've done with that brand. It's pretty cool.
They put a lot of time and effort into creating a better package.
Totally.
Right? Because I know their first version of it was leaking air or something like that, I heard. So I'm sure a lot of R&D went into that because they were the first, right? It's hard to create a, compostable, sustainable chip bag.
Now it's a great bag. It's fresh, like the chips taste fresh. And some of that messaging around being like compostable is one thing, one part of the message, but plastic free is also a really great message where, because everyone, the understanding around actual composting a bag is a bit complicated, but people get plastic free. That's a message that people understand. Look at what Simpla yogurt done. In the yogurt category, they've got plant-based yogurt in a cardboard tub. That's new for that category, and being plastic free, that can be a unique identifier in a category that is full of plastic and even glass in some cases. So sometimes that packaging play can come into the mix for a consumer's consideration.
Definitely. How does a brand get in touch with you or to start doing business with you guys or to have you guys entertain them as a possible portfolio brand? What does that model look like?
The easiest way, go to the website and fill out the form. Hit up Corwin. What's your email address?
Corwin at ethicalfoodgroup.com.
He's a networker. He's good.
Oh yeah, he's the guy.
All over LinkedIn too, but you're very humble in how you reach out and you're a genuine guy. So,
well, I think it's like Rick said about the industry. Like we have to support each other. As people in the industry that sure we want clients that are in the food space. But what's more important is that as an industry that we're growing and changing and doing better things for people and the planet. And that's not always going to come at the B2B level. That needs to come at the community level. We have to be better consumers ourselves. We have to be better advocates of the people that are putting in the blood, sweat, and tears to try to make the world a better place. So I think it's really important. But when people go to ethicalfoodgroup.com, they're going to see our agency services and the very practical ways that we can jump in and help. But also, from the Ethical Foods Fund standpoint, if they're in a fundraising mode and if they want to be on our radar, we're happy to have those conversations and be a listening ear. And as we start to grow sort of the brands that we're investing in and supporting, it's always great to have those conversations. I think a lot of people who are in fundraising mode, and Rick, and you can speak to this, is that it's a relationship. It takes time, and sometimes that first pitch or that first conversation, it's at the beginning, and we all need to learn and get to know each other a little bit more. So brands should not feel hesitant to reach out. Maybe the timing, it needs to wait a little bit, but it's always good to be connected, and our relationships are deep too. There's lots of ways we can help.
You mentioned the importance of community, right? Is there anything you guys do from a community level to get the word out, marketing, social? What does that look like in your world?
Yeah, I put on rollerblades and I just skate around the grocery store and yell and scream at everybody. That works out pretty well. We're putting together a podcast of our own, focused just on sustainable brands and people that are doing great work for the planet. So that podcast will be launching in November. So excited about that. So that'll be a combination of retailers and founders.
What's the name going to be called?
It's going to be called Aisle 42.
You heard it here first, man. You got an exclusive right there.
That's the first time I've said that out loud.
Yeah.
Actually, now I have to do it.
Yeah.
It's okay. My calendar's already booked full of interviews. So, yeah.
If I tell everybody I have to.
That's right. Put yourself in harm's way. That's the way it goes.
Yeah.
What else are you doing?
We're with Ric's expertise, being able to contribute to panels and roundtables and being able to, kind of speak to those larger audiences where founders and food leaders are really needing insights and need ideas. So I think that's a really important place for us as well. And I think just being really good at introducing people to others in the network, in the community, that can be helpful. So just being really transparent with our relationships goes a long way.
And we're looking at, we're pulling together right now some media packages to help brands to, increase their reach and frequency as well. So under the Ethical Food Group brand, we'll hopefully get a few brands that we can help to push out through media channels and sampling and other things. So we're just early days chats about how that could come together so that brands who would not normally have the budgets to be able to get on into channels that would work for them, very grassroots, but be able to actually expand into channels that may be more mass market for them and get the word out under our group. So when we launched it, Food Pro, we put up a video that kind of talked to, if we don't change the way we're doing grocery, the world may not survive. We're not going to be able to feed the 9 billion on the planet that are coming pretty soon. So how can we help brands to get the message out and change the world?
I love that. And it's different today than it was 5-10 years ago. You have to be your own media, right? You guys are probably doing so much to push your agenda, to push the agenda of sustainability and ethical foods. But if you're not telling enough people, it's harder to scale, right? So doing podcasts, I love the idea of having those type of like-minded people on the show, but creating videos and spreading the word through the different social channels is a must right now, even for the brands, right? They have to be their own media, or they hire agencies or whoever to help them.
Right.
But I think there's a spirit of transparency that we see it in CPG, right? The founders and food leaders that are more open and more honest about their journey, about their challenges and their triumphs, that is attractive to people. I think the expectation should be the same on people on the vendors side, and just being open and being honest about how hard it is and how important it is. And
It's so glamorous, or it's like, oh, you got your product on the shelves of Metro, you're a millionaire. No, they're probably almost bankrupt, and they're wearing 50 hats, and they don't know what's going on.
But
and
also,
they're running into
not everything
fans.
needs to be a marketing message, right? Not everything needs to be promotional or an advertising mode. Just being vulnerable, being honest. Consumers are attracted to that. Mm-hmm. Look how consumers are responding to Midday Squares. I mean, they have their own reality TV show, basically, that happens to sell functional, healthy chocolate. But people are buying into that brand because they feel an affinity, a connection. There's some commonality to the shared human experience. That's what people want from brands that give it shit.
We preach that. It's hard to do, right? Not everybody can talk in front of a camera. Not everyone wants to be on camera. Not everyone wants to be social. Some people can post all day and they get tons of engagement. Some people do it and it goes horribly wrong, right? There needs to be a little bit of training, guidance, blueprints to make it a little bit easier. And it sounds like you guys are guiding and pushing them in that direction. But yeah, I think brands just need to be more vulnerable, be more transparent with what they're doing. And I think consumers, that's what will evolve the consumer to want to purchase more products in those categories, right?
Yeah, I think consumers are drawn to a narrative that they find affinity with. And that's a big part of the puzzle, I think.
And I think the other side of it is it doesn't need to be all sustainability all the time either. There's an emotional hook that still needs to happen with the brand to feed the ego, because consumers like to be represented by the brands that they eat, wear, drive, and that's I think sometimes we forget that in the sustainability push that it's got to be about saving the planet all the time. Well, actually, you need to do both. You need to be able to get that emotional hook, and sometimes it's not just about we're using recyclable packaging. It's about, okay, what's the brand represent to me, and what does it mean to my family? So I think that's also part of the advisory. If you don't want to use us from a marketing point of view, that's all good, but we'll help you to think about things in a different way, rather than just I need to hammer home sustainability all the time.
I think the biggest area of opportunity is having those discussions at the retail level. Right? So they understand it, right? If you have an educated category manager or VP of merchandising, whatever it is, if they really get it, then they're going to go source the right products. They're going to communicate, hey, maybe not right now, you need to tweak a little bit of things here. Then they get in contact with you, or they're all ready, and you're attacking it from both angles. And at the end of the day, it's the retailer's responsibilities to get these products in front of the consumer at the right price at the right time, or it's never going to work.
Right.
And all the big retailers, they all have annual sustainability reports. They all get measured and report on those things. They have to grow. Every category has to grow and improve at those levels. And for the brands that can speak to that, amongst all the other things that they have to speak to, if they can add that layer of sustainability and say, this is what we're doing, and this is where we're going with our sustainability efforts, the retailers are going to pay attention. They're going to appreciate it, and they're going to want to leverage it themselves.
100%. Are you guys okay talking a little bit more about the fund and
for sure.
how that's structured?
Sure.
Like what level of investment are you typically going with? How much equity? What size of the business are you like? Is it early stage? Is it what is?
Yeah, great question. So we started the fund with the philosophy, the foundation that there's a 5-tiered grocery industry for brands. And so tier 1, starting out, you're at the farmers markets, you're kind of selling to friends and family, you're able to do one-on-one marketing every Sunday at the farmers markets. And then tier 2, you're kind of moving out of that, you're getting local stores, you're starting to get some traction. And then tier 3, you're probably up around 1,000 stores, moving north of that. And then tier 5, you're multinational. So you might be Little Potato Company, as an example, 20,000 doors in North America. So we saw, and being involved in brands who are growing, that tier 2, tier 3 area where you're headed to more grocery stores. You might be starting to go national or more broadly regional, and you need money. And the money isn't necessarily marketing, because you've got your brand reasonably okay. Where you need money is working capital. You need that. You need to be able to fulfill that first order for 180 stores out of the gate and get manufacturing. And if you're co-packing, you need to pay for that up front. So that's where we saw the opportunity to put a fund together and help those sustainable brands get over that initial hump. And it's not just about getting in early, because that's where the multiples are from a fund point of view, but also to help these brands get out of the basement or get out of a co-packing arrangement or whatever it is to really get going. So initial fund, $2 million, and we've deployed into 4 brands so far. We're writing checks anywhere from $100,000 up to about 250 in that fund. 4 brands that we've invested in so far, so Humble Potato Chip, Wise Iced Tea, Tomorrow Foods, and then a food company out of Edmonton called Uproot Food Collective. They've got a couple of their own brands, South Island Pies and Humble and Honest Dumplings, starting to go national. So 4 brands that we've invested in, been in those guys for about 6-8 months now, and Humble's probably the most successful out of that range so far. They're starting to kick ass and go into the States, which is pretty exciting for us. And then we're starting to look at Fund 2. And Fund 2 will be maybe not follow-on yet, but larger check sizes in that 2 million sort of range. So as these brands start to go towards Series A, and we're starting to talk to government entities and doubling up on dollars and things like that to help these brands get over the hump and maybe get south of the border and start headed into the States.
Nice, yeah, that's exciting. That phase 3, what you described, is kind of like a sweet spot where things are starting to click, right? The retailers are starting to adopt it, consumers are starting to adopt it, and it's like, okay, it's either they get money or they don't, and they kind of plateau for a little bit, and then they fund their own business for scale, right? So you're helping them speed up and then tweak a lot of those issues and get ahead of it, right?
And I think because sustainable brands and products, like you look at CHFA and the way it's exploded, the competitive nature of the category is really there, right? You used to be able to get into a category with a sustainable brand and be on your own for maybe 2 or 3 years. That is accelerating. There's 6 coconut yogurt brands, as an example, who are all vying for the same shelf space, and the guys and gals with dollars who can accelerate their growth and get into more grocery and get their brand out there are going to win over time. And so how can we help them to build working capital and get ahead of it? That's what we're all about as a fund. So that second fund is all about funding that next step of growth beyond getting them into retail. It's about expanding growth and hopefully being brand owners within a category.
Yeah, no, that's exciting. Are you seeing any good stuff at CHFA? We're at the show. Are you looking to invest in more brands while you're here? Start having those conversations? Yeah. I'm sure a number of those brands have booths here. What is the role at the show? What are you guys trying to accomplish?
Our eyes are wide open. I mean, we're paying attention, especially some of the brands where their sustainability claims are really well thought through, and they're sort of through the value chain they sort of make sense, and we sort of feel like the consumer could potentially really grab onto this, and So we're sort of in research mode here at the show. We're not exactly walking around handing out checks, though that sounds very fun. I'd like to do that one day.
Me too.
Yeah, wouldn't that be great? But,
Oprah with money.
Oprah, yeah, we just want
There's a check
money.
for you.
Maybe get one of those money guns. Have you seen those guns? You just load it up with some bills and shoot it out at everybody.
Ring the bell.
Yeah, ring the bell. Of course, that's exactly what we're doing, and we're asking a lot of questions and just digging in, and how are they scaling? How are they growing? What's next for them? And trying to just make sure we're learning about the brands that we think we could either be a part of or support down the road, or be a resource for.
In making a lot of these decisions, right? Are you looking at categories that have a gap that are ripe for disruption, that at the same time could use something innovative in the category, not sustainable, and then injecting it with a sustainable mission, and then that's something that's really cool? Are you looking at data like that and looking at it as a thriving, untouched category? Like, I'm just thinking of one that we had a discussion with, chocolate confectionery is one that's ripe, I think, for disruption. Yogurt and things like that you mentioned, right? If you got in early, right, a category that's generally more conventional right now and could use that brand, right?
Yes is the answer. I think as I said before, grocery is just such an interesting puzzle, and the brands that will get funding have a lot of the puzzle pieces, but they may not have the picture yet. And so when we look at them, as per most funds, you've got all the financial data, you've got the data around the founder, it's the relationship with the founder, it's what are they going to use the money for, are they raising enough? All of those questions are part of the criteria. And then the sustainability thing for us, most importantly, is table stakes. They just have to have that. So there's a combination of all sorts of data that we look at. Ideally, you get a blue ocean opportunity. And I often make the comment to investors who are investing in us. Even Disney said no to Titanic the movie, right? So you don't hit every one that comes through. And the pure nature of a fund is you're investing in early stage, particularly early stage, where you're taking a punt on what's going to happen. And we believe because we're backed by marketing people and advertising people, we believe we're picking brands that we can help and filter through the consumer lens. Whereas a lot of investors will look at it from a purely data-based perspective. Well, that category's not worth doing. No, I'm not going to go into it. Whereas we look at it from a consumer perspective and trying to follow those trends as much as possible. So.
Yeah, it's not easy too to find that next winner, right? There's so, we're at the trade show. There's, I think, 1,100 brands exhibiting. They're all incredible brands. Right? It's how do you succeed, right? There's so many pieces to the puzzle, right? And it's finding strategic partnerships to put more of those pieces together, to paint more of the picture, right? That isn't easy, right? And it's incredible what you guys are doing to push the sustainability and the ethical part of it. But yeah, it takes a village.
Totally, and people just play such an important role in it. The founder needs to be open to advice. The founder needs to have a good circle of advisors. The founder needs to be able to hire the right people at the right time for when their business. They need to be able to then look forward as to where their money's going to be spent. All of those things are the founding group to us is so important in that calculation.
I was going to ask that. How important is that founder? Are you more likely to invest in a company that has multiple founders or a single founder? Is it, are you really diving into who that person is and what they're capable of doing? Because I think it's more than half of the puzzle is that founder needs to be exceptional and have the vision to put the pieces together.
Totally. And in answer to your question, there's no formula. I think you can have a single founder can have a great group around them that have done it before or are full of energy and just have the right knowledge and the right connections to make it happen. from the most dangerous investment is not trusting the founder because you think you can do better yourself, so you try and jump in. Whereas
That's probably a big thing is putting the trust in them to do it, right?
once you put your check in, most of the time that's it. You can advise, and that's it. They also want smart money. They want help, a good founder, and they invite you to the table to have really good discussions. And so, totally.
You have to play a unique position because you know where to take them, you know what they need, but you also have to give them the flexibility to do it, trust in what they know what they're doing, right?
Totally. And acting as an advisor, to me, is about helping them with process. So where's the consumer in all of this? Because at the end of the day, their brand is being consumed by consumers. And so if they don't have an eye on who their consumer is, who the target is, why the product and the brand appeals to that consumer, and that's what we can help with. But at the same time, if they don't have that vision up front, or they're not asking those questions, and they've created a product because they think they can, that's a warning sign.
Yeah. How about brands that launch on digital e-commerce first? What do you think about that strategy? Are you guys leaning towards more of a... the only reason why I asked, I had a conversation a little bit earlier with a new brand that we're looking to launch with, and they have so much... It's almost like every brand we want to launch with should have a e-commerce capability or blueprint mapped out. You get all the consumer data. There's so much proven success.
If they can do it right.
They can do it right.
You can have your own D2C and kind of mail it in, and there's no follow through, and the abandoned cart is a broken email, and there's no personality and there's no honest connection. Then it's just you just have a crappy version of Amazon, and it doesn't help. But if you can do D2C well, and you can learn and listen and beta test and do special things that only those consumers have access to because they're on your mailing list. Like, if you can do that as a brand, and then you start going into retail and you start expanding out, you've got this groundswell of support, which is remarkable. And I think for us on the other side of the industry, it's like, those are all good signals. So it certainly can be helpful. It isn't necessarily everyone's blueprint, but if you're going to do it, I would say, do it well and pay attention to the details.
Does a brand like that seem more attractive to you guys if you're from a funding perspective, a brand that has a really good, because it's hard to really put your finger on it, but if they created a really good online presence, they have a really good map of success, but they've never been in retail, right? That's a risk, that's a bet.
Totally, and the beauty of direct-to-consumer is that you're keeping all the margin, right? So, when you go to retail, we always advise brands that at a gross margin level, you should be at least 65%. Otherwise, you guys are not going to make money. You take out trade marketing, you take out your own marketing, you take out warehousing, spoilage, all of the things that get added on. It's a completely different game. And the danger with direct-to-consumer is you priced your product to the consumer, assuming that all that margin is yours. But when you go to retail, which is... retailers, at the end of the day, retailers right now are still driving thousands of feet to every door that they own, and you've got an opportunity to be seen. It may be 6 milliseconds or whatever the stat is, but you've got an opportunity to market with the retailer, but you pay for that, and the margin's there. So, in answer to your question, yes, if they've got a great direct-to-consumer business, that's awesome, because they've got brand followers, and if it's geographically spread, great. If it's hundreds of $1,000s a month, great, because it means lots of consumers that are just buying their brand and getting direct. But if the model isn't there, i.e. they're selling at $10 and their cost of goods is $9, they get destroyed. So once again, sorry man, it depends. But yes, I love the direct-to-consumer model. I think direct-to-consumer saved a lot of brands through COVID. One of our investments, Uproot Food Collective, as an example, they pivoted straight into D2C, and it saved the business over COVID because they couldn't get into retail. They couldn't get any more doors. And so, yes is the answer, but once again, it depends on what the model looks like.
Yeah, 100%. So we're going to wrap up.
Yeah.
You guys are probably busy. You want to see some more stuff. I'm starving.
I'm actually hungry. I'm not fake hungry.
It's all the smells, man.
I know. Well, there was this waft of curry. Did you smell that curry that came?
Yeah, I've been smelling a few things. I think someone was eating behind me while we were chatting. But no, I appreciate you guys doing this.
Thanks, Carl.
Where can people find you again? Ethicalfood.com, ethicalfoodgroup.com.
Yep.
Ethicalfoodgroup.com. I'm Corwin, Corwin, at ethicalfoodgroup.com. And I'm on LinkedIn. Find me there.
Fantastic. Podcast is launching
November.
We're all going to hold you to that.
Yeah.
Dang.
Right, which is exciting. I'll listen to it. Appreciate you guys coming on the show. It's been fantastic. I hope you guys enjoy the rest of the CHFA.